Waves Taken Hold is a unique poem in this collection. It is a poem I wrote almost a year ago for an event hosted by the South Coast Writers Centre and the Wollongong City Gallery. The South Coast Writers Centre organised an ekphrastic event at the Wollongong City Gallery where writers were asked if they wanted to write poems in response to an exhibition by Sally Gray, and Sally Gray's exhibition or artwork was a video of the sculptural form of the funerary fund and talked about the themes of death, friendship and time. Before I wrote the poem, I went and saw this film at the Wollongong City Gallery, which was very beautiful and very powerful, because to take the theme of death and make it beautiful and make it tasteful art is very difficult, and I think Sally Gray pulled it off quite well. In response to this artwork, I wrote Waves Taken Hold about the death of my friend George Matchett, who died now almost 3 years ago, actually it's the 9th of March now, so 2 weeks from now will be the 3rd anniversary of his death. When I wrote this last year, it was approaching nearly the 2-year mark. In fact, I actually read, tomorrow is the 10th of March, and this event was the 10th of March last year, so it will be a year to the day. Tomorrow it'll be a year to the day since I wrote this. I read it out at this event. So it's quite fitting that I'm making this video now, talking about this poem and making it a part of this collection. Anyway, I'm digressing. Back to George. George was a wonderful man who I met on my very first day in Wollongong as a first-year uni student. We lived at an accommodation called Campus East together. He lived down the hall from me, only 3 doors down. I lived in Unit 77 and he lived in Unit 80, I think. And he became a very good friend of mine and a good friend of most of the residents. He was actually voted most popular resident at Campus East at the end of year dinner at Campus East. And it wasn't a mock award either. The award was with sadness and it's kind of a sad irony really, because this award was in memory of a resident at Campus East who also died. And this girl died before. I think it was in honour of a girl that lived there before my time. She died before my time, so it was really eerie when this award was handed out at the Campus East end of year dinner the next year when he died. He died on March 23rd, 2011. He was surfing with friends. He got caught in a rip and drowned. His death affected me. Not only because he was my friend, but because he was only 9 months older than me. He was the first person in my life that I knew who died young. It still affects me to this day, especially when I talk about him, and I've actually written about him a lot and written about his death a lot since his death. I think the first thing I wrote about his death was I was in a creative writing class, and it was a microfiction class, so we would write short stories, and every week as part of our assessment we'd have to write a short story every week, and get feedback on it in class. This particular story I wrote about his death didn't get feedback, but it wasn't even a story, it was just a recount of what went on that day, because his death was the only thing on my mind. And when I submitted that into the class, that was a Wednesday class, his funeral was the next day when I submitted this story. Waves Taken Hold is not only about his death, but it is also about my fear of death, because I know death is inevitable. I use ocean waves as a metaphor for death, which probably isn't the most appropriate metaphor to use considering the way he died. However, I think it works because it isn't the most appropriate metaphor. Death it's a horrible subject, it's a sad subject to talk about. You don't want to think about it, but at the end of the day, death is inevitable to everyone. Some of us die young and some of us don't. That might sound bleak or blunt, but that's just the reality of it. And considering, I also thought that even though it's an inappropriate metaphor, but it's also an appropriate metaphor, because his death affected me so much, I haven't actually stepped foot in the ocean, or I haven't swum in the ocean since his death. The ekphrastic event was also a competition and a reading. I didn't win the competition, but I did get to read Waves Taken Hold out loud, which was very exciting. It was the first poetry reading I went to and participated in. It was also a couple of months after I finished writing my first poetry collection, Scars, so it was during that period of time that my inner poet was coming out, which was really nice. This is the only poem in the collection that wasn't written for the collection. As I said, I did write it a year earlier, but I added the poem to it because I felt that the poem belonged in there due to the collection being about questioning society and questioning life. And questioning life also means questioning death.